I'm Mary Pepino, and welcome to Fit4You, the show that teaches you how to live a healthier and more fit lifestyle. Today's show is all about Pilates. If you've done any type of exercise over the last few years, you've probably heard about mat, reformer, the various types of Pilates exercises. We have my dear friend and instructor, Kathi Halbert, as my guest, and we're going to talk about and demonstrate some of the key benefits and exercises of the Pilates methodology. Kathy's STAT certified. You're going to meet her in a few minutes. But interesting to note, I had been working out for 30 plus years before I started Pilates training. Very dedicated to my cardio, very dedicated to my weights, and could never achieve the core strength and tightening that I did with Pilates. I'm very faithful to it, about once a week, and we're going to show you a little bit of what it's all about and how it can work for you. I hope you enjoy the show. It's my pleasure to introduce my dear friend, my Pilates instructor, and one of the finest people I have ever met, Kathi Halbert of Kathy's Dance and Gym. Kathi, thank you, honey, so much for joining me. I couldn't do a show on Pilates without you.
Well, it's a pleasure being here, Mary, and I think about our years together and how long it's been, and watching both of us as we went through the process. It's been great.
Well,
it's really been great.
I first learned about you many years ago because I was in my early teens, as you were, because you started your first studio when you were in high school.
Yeah, I was actually a junior in high school, and my guidance counselor had wanted a place for his daughter. I started, if I remember, I think there were 33 students in my mother's basement, and we did it there, and it was just kind of a hobby. It was word of mouth, and I was just fortunate to have it grow from there. I went to Kent State and still commuted and kept the studio going, and by the time I graduated, it was a full-blown studio.
And here you are today, yeah. 40 plus years later.
Yep.
Over 500 students.
No, somewhere in there, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a great journey. It's been wonderful.
And I know you also head up a couple of the top, and pardon me because I don't know the correct terminology, but some of the top dance organizations in the country. I know you are. Do you want to explain?
I'm really involved in Dance Masters of America, and then your substitute, like Ohio Dance Masters, would be my regional, and then Cicchetti Council of America, which is the ballet that I promote, which is the Italian classical ballet. The nicest thing about that one is that it's involved with grading for students, so they actually get examiners that come in from all over the nation and kind of score them as they go. So it's nice for kids to have to own up to someone besides you. You're saying it all the time, but I think, and I just really think it's important for the students, even if it's recreational, that they're getting sound knowledge and training, because we're talking training bodies, and that's really important.
And your training, what I think a lot of people don't understand is, especially the way you've trained for dance and your STAT Pilates certification, you really know and understand the body. But what I find so interesting and so valuable to me, my certifications are in exercise training. Your training in dance is a little different approach to understanding the body and working it out. Can you touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I definitely, believe me, wish I had as much, kinesiology. I wish I had more and more and more all the time as you're learning. But there is an understanding with dance. You work with the body, and especially because Pilates is so core-oriented and alignment-oriented, and you really, in fact, it's very interesting because when I took my very first certification, I was very fortunate that my instructor was a ballet dancer. So that really helped me tremendously, but I was the only dancer of a group of about 12, maybe 8 or 12, and they were they were all over the place, their whole degrees, and they would like take a body, and we'd have to sit and align it and talk about, all of its placement, and I didn't know the names of everything, but I always at the end would say, I think mine looks better than anyone else's, but it'd be like, move that hip over there and get that, so we would laugh. Eventually I did get into the study and learning, but you do get a sense because you're feeling and touching kids their whole life, working, and the alignment of dance and your basic body alignment. I mean, it's the original alignment book is still out there. It's not. You don't have to be a brain scientist. It's pretty basic, and it hasn't changed a whole lot of when Stott himself started, or when Pilates started the whole process. I mean, it's pretty well stayed the same. We're just staying very basic.
We're going to get back to how Joseph Pilates started all this real quickly, but I want to comment. I think that's one of the things that's so important too about Pilates. People don't realize, but in order to have a beautiful ballet form or a beautiful Pilates form when you're doing exercises, it takes a very strong body to maintain that beautiful alignment. And I think that's one of the things that you strive for and that you can gain from Pilates, because that was somewhere I was deficient. I mean, it's very easy to run or get on an elliptical and you're not so worried about having perfect form. But when you get into Pilates, it's about, maintaining it, and that core better be awfully strong, and you can build towards it.
Sure.
But it's all about that, having that strength to have that beautiful alignment. Talk about the beginning of Pilates, Joseph Pilates. Give us the background, how this all came to be.
Well, I mean, he just, way back when he started, it was a matter for him. I think he had some physical issues himself, if I remember correctly, and
was in a hospital bed.
Yeah, was in a hospital bed, and he just wanted to develop something that he felt would be very safe and would kind of bring him back to rehabilitation. So it really almost started out like a rehabilitation feel for him. And he developed the beds. Pretty much everything he did is where it's at, and then there are a lot of Pilates out there now, and they've just taken his basics, and a lot of people have built on it in different ways, but he definitely was used as a rehab, and he wanted to make himself strong. And I mean, if you see anything or read anything about him, his body was amazing as an older person, and he really kind of kept up with it. But if you really study, it hasn't changed a whole lot. It really, you can change the names, and maybe now you've switched the breath around or the order that you do the exercises in, which everyone's always trying to kind of work on. But his basics are pretty much right there, no matter what it is, Stott or basics or whatever one you go by.
Talk about the breath. Breathing is extremely important, as it is in yoga. Question number one, what would you say the difference between Pilates and yoga is?
Well, breath for me, because I've never really trained yoga. I've done some yoga classes and have loved it, but I found it to be like the breath in Pilates is definitely, it's lower lobe lung, and you are to keep your abdominals intact and not abdominal breathing. So like yoga, singing, acting, very, very abdominal.
So when you take in a deep breath, and we'll show, because that was one of the toughest things for me, I always want to take in deep breaths. You sort of pooch the stomach out when you take in the breath, and then when you blow it out, you deflate the abdominal area. Right. In Pilates, you want to keep it deflated all the time.
Yeah, you really do. You want to keep that stomach activated. And so it's really a shallow breathing. I mean, this isn't a very strenuous exercise as far as it's not to get you, it's not like you're taking a run, so you're controlling that. But so the breathing is a little bit different, and you're to expand through the lungs, and the lower lobe of the lungs is to do the expansion so that you can maintain posture and not getting that whole belly thing going. And I can remember, and that was probably one of the first things that really drew me, because when I was young, like we're saying 7, 8, and totally enamored by ballet and sitting at the bar, and the teacher would be, really correcting about your stomach. And for me, the only way I could figure out to do it was to hold my breath. I could from one side to the other, like, okay, and she'd come by and I would get that stance going again, and I realized, you can breathe in a different way, so that stomach isn't working. And so you're constantly, especially in a Pilates workout, really working to always keeping the shelf of the abdominal and the transverse muscle activated, and that would be the goal. And I know we've often talked about sit-ups, and you don't want the pooch, and you talk about the scoop in, but I don't think we really understood how that would work. And then your breathing, when you do deep exhales, that automatically closes the rib cage and kind of contracts it. So that's an additional help to motivate. So it's on the inhale that it's hard not to fill up. The exhale is easy to do the contraction on. So but the breathing was a big deal. It was a big deal for all of us. And you really do want to keep that breath going. Keeps the blood, keeps the oxygen going, and it does a lot of things and really keeps energizing the workout. So breathing becomes really important.
I was a person, got into this as some of my audience that watch knows. I got into exercise into my late 20s. So started with the cardio and the aerobics and all of that. Then got into the weights and have been very dedicated ever since, going on 30 plus years for me. nothing changed my core area like Pilates did when I started working with you. And that was probably most interesting to me. Why?
Well, I think learning how to, when you do a sit up and let's say you're letting it bulge, you're definitely building strength. I mean, let's not, but you might be using hip flexors more. You might be using some other, when you really learn to take that core, really deflate it, which is kind of a nice kind of lay term to get that feeling, and learn how to keep that working and really go through sequential spine movement, one layer at a time, really feeling that you're taking one vertebrae at a time as you're doing that C curve and you're rolling. You constantly have your stomach engaged, and it's that engagement that will develop strength. There's nothing, isometrics is wonderful, and it's almost like you're doing, if you do an hour workout, you're doing kind of an hour of isometrics on your stomach if you're totally working on neutral strength, imprint, which are all part of the...
Which we'll demonstrate when we get down
there.
Stairs.
So, yeah.
A little bit about the back. So many people have back injuries and are looking for some type of relief. And I know you've worked with some people that have had some really significant injuries. Explain why Pilates is so beneficial and so helpful to people that have back issues.
Well, I truly believe that a lot of it is strengthening the core. That's kind of holding us up. But it isn't just, there's the 5 basics. You're at the breathing, you've got the stabilization of the scapula, you've got the rib cage that needs to be enhanced, you've got your neck alignment, and all of that sits well on, it's all about an alignment. All that's going to really help how the back is and how you sit. If you're standing constantly with a pelvic forward or an anterior or a posterior tilt, you're putting different pressures on your spine that don't need to be there. If you're sitting with a cervical that's kind of forward all the time, that's like a 10-pound bag. Think of taking a 10-pound bag of potatoes, holding it here or holding it here, and then the difference of a strain on your back. So not just your core strength that's going to be important, but I think just alignment altogether. I know people who finally like this whole, or we have this tension. You work at a computer all day. You've got this. Once you learn to really open this up, I've known people say, I don't get headaches anymore. I don't get, a lot of things has to do, and I think it's because constantly doing things in the correct alignment and correct form. You can do about half as much as you did, you sit in a gym sometime and you watch these guys and you just marvel at their strength, but you look at the sacrifices they make to get that bar up there and you're like kind of sweating bullets. It's really scary to see. So just keeping, and then it's also making sure that you're not just developing. The whole thing is very balanced. It's very careful not to develop one strength over another. So, I know, and also with flexibility. Often even with the studio, we happen to constantly be stretching hamstrings, working splits. Everybody wants to have flexibility. Forget about what then happens to the quad, and are we doing that reverse stretch? Working in dance, I work in turnout. How much do we strengthen turn in? Which is something Pilates really wants to do. And you remember being like footwork. We work in, but, and you have that student who loves being out, can't go in. The person that loves being in can't go out. But Pilates really tries to say we need a balance. It's just, moderation at all things. There's nothing better.
And when I think about, a true fitness program to really keep you in proper shape, should be your strength resistance training for, the muscles, tightening and toning. You want your cardio for your cardiovascular, your heart, keep, the body energized. Then you need your stretching. And that is what so many people don't incorporate. And plus, it's difficult, and sometimes stretching is very painful. Like a lot of people can't even touch their toes.
Right.
But the thing I love about Pilates, and maybe you can touch on this a little bit, it eases you into stretching to what your capability is. And then you, over, a 3 or 4 week period, can be amazed at how you can advance and elongate your stretches and develop so much more flexibility.
Sure. A lot of it is you take your time. It's the breathing throughout the stretch. And the nice thing about especially on the reformer or the machine, is that you have that resistance all the time. So you're never just kind of bouncing into things. It's always like a slow kind of resistance, and staying and learning to really use a breath in the middle of a stretch. Stretch is a slow process, and not only over a couple months, you'll see it sometimes within the hour. By the end of the workout, you'll see all of a sudden the body feels very loose and let go, and you'll see an improvement of flexibility within the hour sometimes.
And I know famous athletes are doing it, football players, professional golfers, people on the tennis circuit. I mean, it's really becoming men and women, because so many times people think of it as a female activity. And not at all. Some very prominent athletes, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of men sometimes are afraid of it. They don't want to be. My son was a Marine, and I will never forget, he asked me one time if him and one of his Marine friends came in and asked if I'd give a workout. And I said, sure. So we did the hour workout. They didn't say much. They worked as hard as they could. They were totally respectful. And it wasn't until like 6 months later I would hear him talking like it was one of the hard. I mean, hearing him talk like not to me, but to someone else about the respect he had for it, and it was really interesting, you know, and it was totally different because it isn't all about the He-Man. It's not about lifting weights. Most of the things you only do a repetition of 10. It's just constantly trying to keep things in aligned and strengthened, and so yeah. But it was fun to hear him talk about that.
And I know you've got some young girls doing it, but the more beneficial thing I think of, because when you're young you can do so many things. You can do this well into your 80s.
Definitely, and for myself, not counting the years down by any means, but
beyond, by the way.
But you do need to, things are going to break down. You need to be able to have something safe that you can still maintain activity, and it will constantly give you, that resistance that you need, but you can still develop it. And it can be as basic as you want it to be or as advanced as you want it to be.
It is probably the best way as you age to maintain strength and balance. And I think if people just give it a try for that, they will be amazed at how much better their balance can become, within a month or two of really focusing on good, structured Pilates exercises.
Sure. Well, balance itself, I mean, you could take Pilates to the Bosu, they'll do balance there or whatever, but just
the
basic.
Bosu ball, for those that don't know what it is, it's
little
like
flat
a
half ball. But the thing is, if you're just standing in a class and I want a child to do a 1 foot balance, I'm going to talk about her getting up on top of her spine, engaging her core, pressing down through her shoulders, really making all that happen, which is basically what you're training your body to do. So the balance doesn't come from really practicing a balance exercise. It comes from training your body of how it's supposed to stand. You look at a skeleton and it's got it all right. That old little Tony Chestnut, when I taught 4th grade for a while, and we had that skeleton in the room. It lays right. Once we layer the muscles and the tendons on top, we start to yank at these bones. But if you just look at a skeleton, it's that simple. There's nothing, there's nothing special to it.
I could sit and talk to you all day, but I want to take and show our viewers exactly what we're talking about, and we're going to demonstrate some things with me of things that were very difficult for me to do that I'm now able to do easily, and then maybe some things that I would just start to try to do now that are going to be a little difficult for me. So we'll give them a little taste of both.
All right, we're ready to go.
Kathy.
All right, thanks.